What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and I am back with the top bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. It's going to be mostly a Bellator show this week, just because the Bellator event is a far superior card to the UFC one. It's also on at probably a better time, although for me it should be a better time because it's 6 o'clock in the morning here, but you know, I'm basically on American time now, so it's probably the Bellator card is at a better time for me. But anyway, I think overall the Bellator card is more exciting, is more fun to break down. I broke it down the other day. If you haven't seen it yet, it's up on our YouTube here on Sherdog.com and all the audio platforms as well. And it's a good card. It is a good card. But that's neither here nor there. We get the bets from wherever we can get them. And I have one from the UFC and I have 4 from Sherdog this week. Before we get into that, though, a quick recap of the record. Now, I've been keeping it. We're only 2 events in so far. Obviously, last week was the kind of the yearly bets, so we'll see them at the end of the year. But so far, 8 picks and 2 flyers. One of the fights didn't happen, so 7 fights so far. 5 out of 7 on the bets. 5 out of 7 on the bets. All 4 bets last time hit, which is probably the best run I've ever been on when I decided to keep to keep a hold of what I've actually been doing. So that's great. And 1 of 2 on the flyers as well, which is massive considering the flyer we hit was plus 700 on week 1 with Usman or Magomedov. So a great start to the year. 6 bets out of 9 have hit so far, and some good prices, like the prices last week, plus 100, minus 1500, plus 215 on Johnny Walker. What a great price that, minus 200. Okay, and before that, the ones that hit were all around even money prices as well, and then you had the plus 700. So what a start to the year for the betting show. And let's give you some losers this week, because that's always the way it goes. I'll come back next week and betting them, but can you stay here and watch these ones? But no, I think it's been a good start, and obviously, as I always say, we do this for fun, and we do this, to enjoy the fights maybe a little bit more. I'm not taking it too seriously and going mad in it, so a little bit of fun, the everyman's betting show, and we will keep it that way, I suppose. So let's get into the bets for next week. Also, but just before I get into that, I suppose I just to quickly touch on the whole James Krause situation again. I think the point we're at it now at the moment, and I've obviously touched on this 3 or 4 or 5 times maybe at this stage on the betting show. We're at a point now where and I said this a while back, is also like, when's something going to happen? Like, what? Is there? It feels like we're in the middle of like a case kind of being drawn up here, and something either that's going to take a long time to, I suppose, get an answer for, or a long time to, investigate, which is like a really bad position, okay, for James Krause and all the people involved, but also like a lot of the fighters. I saw, James Gallagher talking last week. We saw Brandon Moreno talking about it. It feels like a lot of these guys are kind of in a limbo as well, and I just think a resolution is kind of badly needed for everyone in this. Look, it obviously the signs are not great. The signs don't point to it being great through all of this, and I think there needs to be a resolution to this. I would say sooner rather than later for everyone. And I think what has been interesting as well, just before I move on and get to the bets, is that I feel like the cloud that was over MMA for a while has very, very quickly been lifted, because I think of a few good decisions. I think the UFC didn't come at this problem like they come at most of their problems, which is head on, which was good, and obviously they couldn't because this is more serious, but it's kind of been mentioned by everyone. It's not being ignored, and when you do that sort of stuff, and when I say I met head on, I mean head on with like a fight. They met a head on with like the facts, this is happening, it's terrible, it's bad, it's a terrible situation. Not necessarily what happened was terrible or whatever, but it's a terrible situation. It's in the hands, it's serious and all of this. And I feel like that has left everyone kind of thinking, okay, right, there's something brewing here. Something's going to happen, and we better kind of just wait for it. But as I said, I wanted to get that update in here again, that we are still in a waiting pattern, but I think the tea leaves in terms of the sport itself, maybe not for James Krause or people involved with him, have been a little bit better for the last while. You know, you saw in Canada, and I think somewhere else as well, that they lifted the ban because of things that have been kind of instituted to make it more, you know, reliable, or a few safeguards towards the betting. So that's a good thing as well. So, right, let's get into it here. My one and only UFC bet, I'm going to start with that. I'm going to go with the main event, which is Derrick Lewis against Sergey Spivac. And my bet for that fight, I'm going with over a round and a half at -105 in this one. Now, obviously, it's a heavyweight fight between between two big lads. And, you know, first of all, on Spivac, you look at his record, and a lot of his recent fights, okay, look, there's heavyweights. There's always going to be finishes in the first round, but only 2 of his last, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fights have ended in the first round. You know, and all the other ones that I mentioned there all went past a round and a half. You know, the just to give you the example, the Augusta Sakai fight, his last fight back in August, went past that. Then he had the 2 first rounders, as I said, went to a decision against Olenek, went to the end of the second round against Vandera, went to a decision against Felipe, decision against Tybura, and to the after the halfway point of the first round against Tai Tuivasa. So a lot of his fights recently, you know, have gone past that for heavyweights, if you want to put it that way. And then, you know, Derrick Lewis again. Derrick Lewis is one of those guys who's, it's either going to be early or it'll drag, I think. You know, I think that's always kind of been the way with Derrick Lewis. And like Spivac, he's had a couple in the last few, like 2 of his last 3 have finished inside the first round, but then there was a second round, a third round finish, second round, a decision, a second round finish, a third round finish, a decision, a third round finish, a fourth round finish, a second round finish. So there's actually very few fourth round finishes. Like there's 2 recently, but the last one before that was 2016, which I look at and I think, like, those ones, you know, where it's Pavlovich finished him in 55 seconds. He looks to be a top-range heavyweight. Christakis, who Derrick Lewis finished in the first round, doesn't seem to be that. And if you want to look at Spivac and see his 2 first-rounders, it's Greg Hardy, who's obviously not a top-rated guy, and Aspinall, who's probably a level above. So I think Spivac and Lewis are kind of on the same level. And now I like to go in here and I like to go less numbers-wise and less stats-wise, or whatever you might want to say it, and more like technical-wise. But I think for this one, and for the heavyweight one, sometimes it's better to do it that way and look at it this way, because sometimes we can get carried away with like, oh, you know, they're going to get knocked out in the first round, when we see a lot of the times they actually don't, you know? So I like that bet. I was looking at some of the other bets on it, and obviously we'll get to them towards the end of the show as we get into it. But that was the one that really kind of stuck out to me, that these 2 lads, you know, they're also in a place right now. If you look at their records, you look at Spivac, who, you know, at heavyweight, it's not too hard to get into that mix, I suppose, at the top of it, especially for being a guy like Derrick Lewis, who's like a perennially like 10-4 ranked heavyweight. You know, he's only lost to Aspinall in his last, 6 fights. If he could get a win over Lewis, it'd be absolutely massive for him. And then you look at Derrick Lewis, the other side of it. He's lost 2 in a row, 3 out of 4. The only guy I mentioned is Christakis. He's beaten there, lost to Gania, Tuivasa and Pavlovich. If he ends up losing here, he's even further down the rankings, and he might slip from, you know, top 10 to top 15. And, you know, when that happens, it's always the other way it goes here. So it's a big fight for him. So my point on that is that both guys might be a little bit more safe here in terms of not wanting to lose this fight and trying to protect themselves a little bit more. Lewis does that at times, and I know that Spivac will want to stay away from that big Lewis shot that he knows coming. So yeah, I think I think this one will probably be finished towards the latter end of it, but that would be my call on it. I think they're going to have a little bit of a slower start, and, you know, to go around and have to go 7.5 minutes in this one, you know, let's put it this way. I don't think it's the best bet in the world. in the UFC. I really wanted to pick a bet from the UFC. I didn't see anything more obvious than this, but I do like this one. I do think this one is going to be going a little bit longer, so that's the bet I'm going for here for the UFC. The over 1 round and a half at minus 105. You can get that around even money. We'll check it again towards the end, but you can get that around even money. I think so. I'll go for that one there. Right, let's talk about the Bellator bets, and I'm going to start with the main event here as well. And look, the pick here is Ryan Bader, and it kind of has to be Ryan Bader, I suppose, to win this one. His price has changed an awful lot over the last while in this, and his price was minus 220 to win this fight when the betting came out, and I looked at it 2 days ago. It had been minus 400, then it went into minus 220, and now it's back out to minus 350, so there was a kind of a correction there, I think, in that. But I'm going for Bader to win inside the distance. He knocked him out very quickly the last time. Bader win inside the distance is minus 210, which I was picking him to win at minus 220. And I think, like, if Bader wins this fight, he's more than likely winning it inside the distance. Let's be honest with that. So you're basically getting the same price for the same result you were hoping when the price has gone massively out. So let me just check here again. The price has gone out to minus 350 in a lot of places. I see him here in one place. You can still get him at minus 265. Like, the reason I put him in at minus 220 when I looked at it first was, at minus 220, I think that's a great price. Minus 220 is not the biggest price in the world. You're not going to be making a lot of money off of that. But for Ryan Bader against Fedor at this stage of his career, I really, really think that's a dead-on bet, and he's definitely going to win. Like, there, as I said, if you watch the preview show, and I talked about ways Fedor can win, but like, a lot of them are like, this is how he will do it if he does do it. But like, the more than likely, most likelihood here is that Fedor doesn't get it done and Bader does get it done, and the most likely way Bader does it is inside distance. Like, you look at the fight right now, how I think it'll go is not necessarily similar to how it went the last time, where they kind of came out, they looked at each other for a few seconds and then they started trading and Fedor was gonzo and Bader hit him with one left hook. I think they're probably that. I think it'll end exactly that way, but not as quickly, I don't think. I think both will probably land a few strikes. You might even get one from Fedor and go, oh my God, is Fedor going to do this? And it'll go a little bit longer. Bader will be able to take a few shots, and then eventually he will land that big shot and it'll be over. And, it could be a case of getting a submission or something as well. That's why I've gone inside this and just be a little bit safer there. But, the one thing with Bader, the only drawback I'd have with this is Bader hasn't looked great at 205 recently. Like, he's looked very bad, but he hasn't brought that to heavyweight at all. And every time he's gone, back to heavyweight, he's looked good. Even the most recent fights, he's looked good, and he's fought people who, no disrespect, like at this stage of Fedor's career, are better fighters than Fedor right now, and he's won. So yeah, it's very hard to look past Bader here. Not the biggest price in the world, but also not the smallest price in the world for a guy who is almost a dead cert to win this. Oh man, there's no such thing as a dead cert in MMA, but it's not a bad price there at all in that one. Not a bad price. Let's move on. Next bet I'm giving. Now, this one is one I'm not at all assured on, but I'm giving it based on the price. This is a real price bet. Now, it mightn't go well for my record at the end of the day, but I analysed this fight. I looked it up and down and all over, and I really, really couldn't split these two in terms of who I think will win. So I'm going for the one with the better price, and that is Johnny Eblen and Anatoly Tokov. And Tokov's price is plus 175, which is a really, really good price. You look around, Eblen minus 205, minus 200, minus 210. I see him here even in one place. That is, like, Johnny Eblen is the same price to win this fight as Bader is to win it inside the distance, or as Bader was a day ago to win it just straight up. That to me is crazy. That to me is crazy. This is a 50-50 fight. Now, it's not to say that Eblen can't win it or won't win it. I genuinely think this is a pick'em fight because, like, I'll say it again. I said it on the preview show. If anyone is going to listen to that as well, please do. But you look at Johnny Eblen, right, and you see him against Mousasi, and you saw what he did was all-out wrestling, looked superb on the ground, dominated that fight on the ground and all over. And you look at these fights before that, and a lot of them, obviously you see wrestling, but a lot of them, you see striking in them. I watched, what was his name? Daniel Madrid, is that his name? Just escapes me now. Knocked him out. He looked great. Look, the whole fight went on the feet. A couple more of his fights were like that as well. Now, was that him learning and he just like, you get to the top level, let's wrestle, basically? Or was that him rounding out his game? Whatever it might be, right? Whatever it might be, he can fight in all areas. You look at Tokov then, and like, it was funny, Big John said it on one of the commentaries, where obviously, you know, he'd officiated out in Russia and he'd done some of Tokov's fights before. And he kind of said, this guy can fight everywhere. This guy can wrestle, this guy can punch, this guy can strike and do it all. And you look at his fights and you think, he can. He absolutely can. Now, there was one of his fights was at Charles Harris. He got hit really hard and almost knocked out, almost finished. He didn't get finished, he kept going. But he's a guy who can really do it all. And like, will Johnny Eblen be able to take him down and dominate him the way he dominated Mousasi? I find that hard to see. And if he does, we have to recalibrate Johnny Eblen completely. Now, I think Johnny Eblen could be the best middleweight in the world right now. And even then, I think I still have to recalibrate how good his wrestling is if he can do that to Tokov, because Tokov can wrestle. Trust me on that. And he can offensively wrestle and defensively wrestle. Let's see as well, if he does offensively wrestle, how good the defensive wrestling of Johnny Eblen is. That's another question here. Very interesting. On the striking, like, it's hard to know how good Eblen's striking is because a lot of people are looking for his wrestling and just letting him to strike by himself, like willy-nilly, basically. But he looks good. Tokov is a way more tested striker than Johnny Eblen in MMA. Way more tested striker. Will that stand to him here? Like, let's say there's and a big reason why I'm picking him here, and I even picked him straight up in the preview show. So I'm basing this on the price, but I also I'm picking him to win. I'm as I said, this is a 50-50, maybe 51-49. I'm just leaning towards Tokov, but by no means am I ultra confident in him. But as I said, if you're to give the edge anywhere to Tokov, it is that experience edge in terms of testing his ability at the higher level. Johnny Eblen fought some good guys, then got into a high level guy against Mousasi and destroyed him. Wasn't really much of a test for him there at all, but showed how good he is. That doesn't mean he can't do it or won't do it, but we will see. I just think this is a phenomenal fight. This is a high level fight, and you know, me talking about middleweight, it's not the best division in the world, but certainly no matter what gloves they're wearing, no matter what orientation the cage is, whether it's an octagon or a circle or a square, whatever it is, these two are two of the best 185-pound fighters in the world. Make no mistake about that. And it's I think this is going to be a classic of a fight. I really do. I think it's a great fight. And I'm picking Tokov, but I'm picking him for the betting show on the price, plus 175. Right. Next bet is another close one, but I'm picking the underdog in this one. Maybe I'm hedging my bets a little bit, but I'm going for Ali Isaev to win here, and he's another one whose price has come in. And you know what? They're even now on price. This one, he was minus 155 yesterday when I was looking at it, and he's gone into minus 110 now, as is his opponent Steve Mowry. So that makes me even happier with my bet, honestly. I think that minus 110 price coming in from 150, 155. I still see him here in one place in an English bookmakers. He is minus 150. So it'll be interesting to see if that price moves in or out in the next while. I'm a big fan of Steve Mowry. I think a lot of people know that if you've heard me talk about him. I've talked to a few people from Bellator about him as well, and they were like, he's one of these guys that flies under the radar, and they were like, I'm glad you're talking about him, because maybe a lot of people aren't talking about him, and I'm glad to talk about him, because Isaev is a guy who I watched in PFL back in the day and who was a very, very dominant fighter back there, 9-0, won the tournament, 4 knockout wins, and he's gone to a decision 5 times. Hasn't fought since December 2019 though. So, it's, you can call it 3 years, 2.5 years out of the game. But wait, actually, what are we? 2023 now, nearly, 3 years, nearly going towards the 4th year out of the cage. And how big of a difference is that going to tell? It'll be interesting to see. But I'm still picking him. The reason I'm picking him, right, is twofold. You look at Steve Mowry, right? He's 10-0. And the level of guys who he has fought, apart from Moldavsky, which went 54 seconds last time out, has not been great. He did beat Gokhan Sakram, who's a good fighter. He did beat him. And I like the win over Raheem Cleveland, who's a better fighter than people make out. He's got a good win since that. And, he's beat Syed Soma as well. So there are some good names on there. But I don't think, apart from Raheem Cleveland, who he kind of destroyed, he's never met anyone, I don't think, with the athletic acumen of Ali Isaev, and how he wins most of his fights is kind of by being the bigger guy, the more athletic guy, the stronger guy, even the faster guy, considering he's, let me just look here, 6'8". He's massive, and he's good for 6'8" as well. I'm just reluctant a little bit to be completely sold on that skill set being enough to beat really good heavyweights at 10-0. I think this is maybe the fight where he gets a loss. He fights 5 more times and then he is really, really, really good. I already think he's good. This to me, we talk about heavyweights outside the UFC and say it's not a great level. Even in the UFC, it's not an amazing level. But the level of this fight is very high. I think it's a very, very high level fight. We very rarely see athletic heavyweights as well in MMA. I think both of these guys are. You look at like the wheel kicks that Ali Isaev throws and all of that. And I've gone back and forth in this fight, to be honest. I can't even remember which one I picked in the previous shot, to be honest. But I was talking to someone else about it. I think I picked Mowry. Now I'm coming back here. I'm picking Isaev. I'm really torn on it, but I will go for Isaev based on the price. Just, it's almost head over heart sort of stuff here, because I do like the way Mowry fights. I really, really do like the way Mowry fights. I like the way Isaev fights as well, but my breakdown of this would be very simply that Mowry won't be able to use his fundamentals to make his athletic advantage over most people be that much of an advantage in this fight, because the CF has been in there against big guys and he's a very, very good athlete as well and can close that distance and do things that mean the length won't be as big of an issue. As I said, the wheel kicks, the kicks from outside, and like when Mowry has to kind of break that distance and try to get inside, he's fighting a completely alien game to what he's used to fighting. Completely alien. Will he be able to deal with that? Will he be able to do that? That is a big question for someone so young in their career. And it's funny, Isaev is a fight less than, but he is 40 years old of age. He's been around for a long time. He's fought a good level of fighter, especially, in PFL, whether it's Goltsov or Rochalt and other people, but I'm very interested to see this fight. As I said, I'm going for the CF, but this one next week I might be kicking myself. I honestly might be kicking myself, but yeah, I'm going for him at minus 110. The last bet of the week I am going for, and this is the flyer of the week. And do you know what? I was looking for a few flyers and I couldn't find one that really, really stood out to me. So do you know what I'm going for here? I'm going for Henry Corrales straight up to win at plus 351. Plus 351. So it's not the biggest flyer in the week of the week we've had, but it's a straight up win. He just has to win. Plus 351. Look, he's obviously in there in a very, very tough fight. He's in there with a really, really, really good guy in Akhmed Magomedov. But he's not without a chance. I think the thing about Corrales is, he fought 26 times and won 20 of them and finished 13 of them for a 145er. now, who, not to say he's fought down at 135, hasn't he? If I'm not, maybe not, but I think he's always in there with a chance. And the fight I look at, right, is the Prabhatchenko fight that happened back in 2021. I remember analysing that. I think it was one of the first cards I did for Sherdog, and I watched a lot of Prabhatchenko before that. And he is not too dissimilar to Magomedov, you know? He, at the time, was even, you know, he had more experience. Okay, he was coming off of a loss to John de Jesus before that, but he's a very good wrestler, very strong, a smaller squatter type of guy. And what I think Corrales showed in that fight, and what he's shown in many fights down through the years, is he's a very good ability to kind of shut guys off and land these power shots. And I think it's going to be, and he's not always done that. You know, he's obviously got in there with Caldwell and a few others, and it's been issues for him. And I think if he can keep Magomedov off him, and you know, Magomedov is only 9 fights deep in his career. 5 of them have finished by submission. It's only his second fight in Bellator. His first one ended in 76 seconds back in July. But he's not met someone like Corrales either. When you're that big of a price, making that much of a jump up in class here, I think it's you know, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Now, look, if you were to give me 50 quid and go, here's plus 100 in each of them, I would put it on Magomedov. Make no mistake about that. If you were to give me a straight pick here, who am I picking? I would pick Magomedov to win this fight. But I think that plus 351 price is a little bit too big. It's a little bit too big. And it's kind of like, it's a less risky flyer than most flyers are. Now, as I said, I want to make the flyers more risky. I do want to make them more risky. But I think for this week, I'm rolling that back for 1 week only, and I'm going for Corrales. I just have a feeling he's going to do what he did to Prabhatchenko on this and be really active for those 15 minutes, really awake and alive and looking for the takedown to be stopped and looking for those big shots to land. And as I said, a flyer. It's not one. It's not adding to the record. It's not. You know, we're not keeping. Well, we are keeping track of it. We're not keeping track of it in the normal record. It's one we throw a dart at, as my guy Aaron Bronstetter would say, and we'll see how it goes. Right, so those are the 5 bets of the week. Let's look into some of the other lines on the cards. As I said, the Derrick Lewis Spivak one is very interesting. Lewis plus 190. He is the underdog here, minus 225 for Spivak. The over-under, obviously, as I said, the over 1.5 rounds is minus 105, the under minus 125. So you see that relatively close there on that one. If you fancy Spivak to get the KO, it's only plus 135. I was looking at that, and I think he probably will get that, and that's why it's such a small price. But then Lewis, you look at it plus 230. I was looking at that as a possible flyer of the week, but it's not a big enough price for that. Maybe the Spivak submission, but Spivak submission is only plus 300. It's very hard to submit Derrick Lewis as well. Honestly, that's one I don't really like any of the prices in. So yeah, it's apart from it going a little bit longer, I think that's what it is. And maybe earlier I said to go 1.5 rounds, to go halfway through the fight. Obviously, this is a 5-round main event, so that's not true. That was another reason I didn't mention it at the time. Because for some reason I was getting caught up in this. It's 3 rounds. These lads at heavyweight are probably going to say, right, this fight means a lot. It's 5 rounds. Let's go a little bit slow at the start. So yeah, that's why I like that bet. That's why I like it. Few other prices from the UFC. Dong Jung against Devin Clark. You know, interesting prices here. Devin Clark plus 210, minus 250 for Da Ung Jung. If you look at Devin Clark's record recently, 13-7 overall, 8 of them have gone to a decision. You know, he's a guy with, you know, good wrestling, who hasn't been on the best run. You know, lost to Smith, Kutalaba and Amzat last time out. But on his day, he can beat good fighters. Like, you look at Dong Jung as well, and I really like him. Honestly, I'm a big fan of his. He has big power. The way he knocked out Kennedy Njoku with it was an elbow, wasn't it? He went 5 rounds of William Knight as well, managed to not get knocked out in that one. But he did lose to Dustin Jacoby last time out, who's not the best fighter in the world. If I'm looking at this one, if I'm looking at the betting price in this one, I'm definitely not betting that straight up. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is not getting bet straight up. No way. I'm looking at maybe you're going for a Jung KO TKO, but then that's only plus 140. Not a great price there. What are you looking at after that? Are you looking Clark by submission, maybe plus 1,200? No. Clark by decision, maybe. Let's see what that is. Plus 400. Maybe that's the one you look at there, but then he's only plus 210 to win straight up in a light heavyweight fight. I'm probably going for the straight up bet in that case. I wouldn't go for it outside of that. But yeah, I went through, I did this, obviously went through a lot of the prices before, and a lot of me and my thinking was like this, no, I'm not seeing anything. And it's funny, you do that sometimes. I did that with Burns and Magny, and then I got to the night and I was thinking, hold on, Burns is plus 100 to finish inside the distance, and I had a late bet in it, and I was like, yeah, okay, of course this is the bet to make. And I just, at the time, I was like, well, it didn't come to me, it didn't show out, but maybe one will show out later in the week here. Tybura Ivanov, then another heavyweight fight, minus 135 for Tybura, plus 115 for Ivanov. I think that's just about right. I would favour Tybura there. Do you know what? I don't think a decision here would be actually a bad call at all. I think this one is going to be a little longer again. Ivanov to win the decision, plus 225. Tybura win the decision, plus 130. And it's interesting, the bookies are seeing it the same way as me, so maybe that's a one to bet straight up. Duho Choi on his way back against Kyle Nelson. That should be a fun fight. I like that one. Duho Choi is the favourite, minus 180, plus 155 for Nelson. I'd probably go for Choi on that one. And then there's a lot of the kind of the road to the UFC fights and some other ones as well. You've a lot of fights. There's a lot of fights in this. I see Mandy Bowman's on it. She's plus 220 against Kim, minus 620. Tatsuro Tiara is back in this as well. Massive favorite, minus 1,200, plus 800 for Jesus Santos Aguilar. So yeah, check out all the rest of those prices. As I say, I'm no expert on all the road to the UFC and all of this, so I'll leave that to one side. But Bellator, I would say I'm probably more of an expert on, especially this card with the preview and all of that. As we talked about Fedor and Bader, plus 285 now for Fedor, minus 350 for Bader. It's a big price and change. And the over a round and a half, plus 185. Now, as I said earlier on, I do think it'll go a little bit longer than the last time. Will it go that long? Maybe not. I think this one could be one that ends early. Fight doesn't go to a decision. Look, it's minus 900. It's minus 900. But then you pick, who's going to win the fight? It's probably going to be Bader. Bader to win inside the distance at minus 210. I know that's the bet I gave. I really like that one. I really like that one. Tokov and Eblen, as I mentioned, plus 175 for Tokov, minus 205 for Eblen. This is a fight I do think will go long. The over 3.5 rounds is minus 180. I think it shows that. No, I haven't said I think it will go long, but also both guys have big power and both guys are able to finish. This is a money line one for me. I think you bet someone straight up. I think if you think Eblen is as good as he shows, and I think he might be. I honestly do think he might be. Then this minus 205 might be a bad price. But I think Tokov is very, very good as well, and that's the reason I've given him the price at that. So, interesting one there. Since the preview I recorded, actually, there's been a change. Dante Shiro is now fighting Neiman Gracie, which is a pity. The other fight was a very good one. Gracie's a big favourite there, and I do think he will win. Berkamov Larkin is another one I was looking at. I like Larkin is plus 185. For Lorenz Larkin to be that price is interesting, but Muhammad Berkamov is a very, very good fighter. Like Corrales, it was between Corrales and Larkin, but Larkin wasn't a big enough price, so I went for Corrales with the FLIER. I think they're two similar enough fights. And you know what? I think Corrales probably... No, I don't know. I was going to say probably Corrales is a better chance. I say it's 50-50, but Corrales is a much better price. And then we have Mowry Isaev, as I spoke about. Chris Gonzalez, Mash Ruskov. Ruskov is the underdog here. Interesting. Obviously we know what has happened in his career so far, but be interested if he could get that kind of underdog win there. I think it'd be massive for him. But Chris Gonzalez is a very good fighter. Neil and Albrechtsen, -145 for Albrechtsen. I wouldn't mind betting on Grant Neal there. I think Albrechtsen kind of got shown up a little bit by my countryman Karen Moore last time out, so Grant Neal might be in with a win there. Lara and Askarova are around the same price, both around -110. Lara is the favourite in a couple of different bookies. I would probably go with Lara. But I'm sure Bellator will be looking for Diana to win that one if they can at all. Nikita Mikhailov against Caldwell. Very interesting fight. Caldwell is the underdog there, as I think he probably should be at this stage of his career. -155 will, I think, end up looking a good price. Lugo and Bates. I can't believe Lugo is such a big favourite here, to be honest. -400. Bates is a good fighter. I think that's a closer fight than that. Probably back Bates there. He's gone out in price as well, I think, +295. And yeah, we have Hughes and Karaka. They're similar enough prices, +120, -140. Karaka is the favourite there. And then Hackett is -500 against Peter Ishiguro at +390. So some good stuff there out of Bellator, good stuff out of the UFC. Next week we have the big UFC 284 card, which I'm really, really, really looking forward to. A quick look at the prices here, and obviously we get them next week. Volkanovski, the favourite, the underdog, obviously +350, -450 for Makhachev. Emmett, +145, -170 for Rodriguez. Very interesting. Rodriguez is the favourite there, but we'll talk about all of that next week. All right, everyone, just to recap the 5 bets for this week. Lewis and Spivak over a round and a half, -105. Ryan Bader inside the distance, -210. Anatoly Tokov to win the Bellator Middleweight Championship, currently held by Johnny Eblen, +175. Ali Isaev to bounce back after 3 or 4 years out, -110. And in the FLIER of the week, Henry Corrales to win at +351. I will leave it there. Thank you everybody for listening and watching. Please hit the subscribe button. Let people know. Leave a comment below. Let me know your best bet for the week and I will reply to you on YouTube, and we'll keep it going for the rest of the year. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.